The Shadowhunter Chronicles, written by Cassandra Clare, is a massive ongoing YA urban fantasy series that, when completed, will span about 28 books. That's 21 books throughout the main series, 4 different anthology books, and then a few other companion books that add some more context to the world and its characters. This series began in 2007 and is soon coming to a close, as the first book in the final trilogy is set to release later this year on November 3rd. I have been a huge fan of this series since 2008, around the time the second book came out, and I have read every single book in the series since then as it released. When everyone was freaking out over Twilight and Harry Potter and the Hunger Games, I was right there with them, but the main thing I obsessed over was the Shadowhunters. This is the series that got me into my love of reading. I had read a few books before this, and I was slowly becoming a reader, but this is where my obsessive behavior with books started. And like I said, I've kept up with the books as they have released, but it has been some time since I've read the older ones. I've never really actually had the chance to binge the whole series all the way through. That is until today. With the final series coming up soon, I felt like I needed a massive recap of all the events that have come before this. The problem is that there's not a really good recap video out there. So I decided that I was going to go ahead and just reread the entire series this year, which currently released, I think we've got 21, 22 books, and I'm going to be doing a live reaction video for each of those books. I'll probably do the anthology books in one video, and then each book of the main series will have their own videos. I'm going to try to do as close to a live reaction as I can. Due to my regular life schedule, it is hard to do full live reactions for everything. I listen to the audiobook while I'm at work and can't really record anything, but I take notes. So some of the bits in these videos are going to be me kind of sitting here at the desk recapping what I read while I was at work, but I am going to try to keep the videos as close to live reactions as possible because I think that'll be more entertaining. And as far as reading order, obviously when I read it the first time, I read it in publication order, which I do recommend if you're reading the series for the first time. However, I did find an interesting reading order here a while back that I think I'm going to do for the reread. I think it's really good for a bingeable scenario, and it's a long list of books, so if you're interested in what the reading order is, I'll put a link to it in the description. I also have a video about it on my TikTok if you want to go there. Not trying to self-promote, but if you don't want to read an article, you can watch my video. Now, with all that being said, let's start with book 1, City of Bones. So I am barely into chapter 1, and I've already got thoughts. When I first read these books, I was 12, 13 years old, and I was viewing all the characters, because all the characters are like 16 to 18, right? And to me, it's like, oh, they're so adult. They're so mature. Now I'm 30, and it's weird. To me, it's like weird thinking about these characters that I grew up obsessing over. It's like, wait, no, these are children. This is weird. This doesn't feel right. Because like all the other fantasy series that I read now, everyone's closer to my age. So it's fine, but it's weird reading these characters in the context of today. So I wonder how I'm going to feel throughout the rest of the series. Like, is this going to hold up to how I thought of it as I read it originally? Or is it just going to feel cringe because it's all teenagers? Now, I will say that the dialogue somehow holds up while also having some like random cheesy 2000s YA lines in there. It's like for the most part, it's like pretty good. And then they'll just have like a zinger in there and it's like that. But for the most part, it's still holding up pretty well. So I get that Clary is supposed to be our main POV. Like she's supposed to have our eyes. She doesn't know anything about this world that she's discovering, just like we don't, right? And so she's supposed to be the one asking the questions so that way we're able to learn what is going on in this world. So I appreciate that she is very curious and is trying to learn about everything, but the way she's doing that is someone will say something or explain something and she will repeat it back to them in the form of a question like, huh? Like they'll be like, shadow hunters, vampires, the clave. Like there was one scene where that happened like 7 times in a row, like 7 different sentences in a row she questioned, and I was like, okay, we need to just move on from this bit and just listen to them. Quit questioning everything, just listen. I know that's mainly only because it's the first book and we're all trying to learn, but that bit was really annoying. The setup for Valentine, the villain, being Clary's dad is so blatantly obvious in the very beginning of the book. Like, I almost feel ashamed that 12-year-old Aaron didn't pick up on this a whole lot sooner originally. Now, I wasn't reading as much at the time. I hadn't learned proper storytelling. I hadn't learned all the tropes, but it still almost seems too obvious. Also, as I continue reading this, I am more and more in the camp that Jamie Campbell Bower was the perfect casting for the movie, and they wasted their opportunity with that. I'm going to hold most of my thoughts about the movie to myself because I think I'm going to end up doing a rewatch video of that. But a lot of the thoughts I'm having right now are just comparisons to the movie and the show. One thing that I feel like I might have missed originally when I read this, or maybe I did see it, I just don't remember it, is the Seraph blades. They're like lightsabers. Maybe just the movie skewed my vision of it, but I had thought they were just like glass blades that lit up. And now that I think about it, I don't even know if they lit up in the movie, but they're like silver tubes that when they call upon one of the angels, a blade of light shoots up. I mean, the Shadowhunters wield lightsabers. Okay, we've reached the Silent City. We have reached the City of Bones. They're at the part where they're with the Silent Brothers in the Silent City, and they are trying to figure out what is going on with Clary's amnesia. Like, they're trying to read her mind and figure out why there's a block on her mind. Can they recover any of her memories? That sort of stuff. And while this is going on, I can't help but think, and this is for those who've already read the entire series, there's a certain Silent Brother by the name of Zachariah. If you know, you know. Where's he at? Where's he at during this event? Like, I get he dealt more with the London Institute in that region, but I want to know what's going on there. And that might be something that we read later in the anthology books. I just can't remember because it has been a while since I've read these. But where's everyone's favorite Silent Brother at during this? Also, when the Silent Brothers discovered the signature on her mind and it said Magnus Bane, and she's like, "What's a Magnus Bane? That's not even a name." It's like, okay, Magnus is a name. You can assume that Magnus Bane is probably a name. That was a very dumb thing that she said. Honestly, I know that Clary is just a teenage girl, and she says and does a lot of stupid things in these books. But why do I feel like Clary's intelligence is so much worse than our other main protagonists in the rest of the series? Like Emma and Cordelia and Tessa, like all these other protagonists, they're so much smarter than Clary. Clary feels so dumb in these books. And it sucks because I don't dislike her as a character, but she's kind of the weakest protagonist in the entire series. And now they're all sitting around talking about who Magnus Bane is. Like, who is this guy? Where can we find him? And then Isabel all of a sudden has a like an invitation to a party hosted by Magnus Bane, and it labels him as the High Warlock of Brooklyn. I get they're young, I get they're kids, but how do New York-based Shadowhunters not know who the High Warlock of Brooklyn is? Also, someone as iconic as Magnus Bane. I mean, that's kind of like you going to Hogwarts and not knowing who Dumbledore is. He's a very notable downworlder. I don't know. That might be a dumb thing to get hung up on, but I just feel like that's something they would have known. Like, they would have heard of him. You know, it's one thing that kind of irritates me about the show and the movie. You had two adaptations to get it right. Some things you got right in the movie, some things you got right in the show. You got this wrong in both. The look of Valentine, he's like 38. They describe him as having like white hair. Not that he's old, just like his hair is so blonde it's almost white. And then eyes so dark they're practically black. And you get this guy and this guy. What? You weren't even trying. You went dude with multiple rat tails and bald. You got it wrong both times. Okay, so there's something here that I completely forgot about, mainly because I don't think she ever mentions it ever again in the rest of the series. They just got to Magnus's apartment to investigate him and find out what he knows about Clary's missing memory, right? She mentions the bartender, and she says, a lilac-skinned woman in a metallic bustier was ranging drinks along the bar in tall, harshly colored glasses that tinted the fluid inside them blood red, cyanosis blue, poison green. Even for a New York bartender, she worked with an amazingly speedy efficiency, probably helped along by the fact that she had a second set of long, graceful arms to go with the first. Clary was reminded of Luke's Indian goddess statue. So she's alluding to the fact that there are creatures here from Indian mythology as well. I don't think at any point in the rest of the series does she really mention other mythologies like that. There's there's angels and demons, vampires and werewolves, and then you have the Fae, which includes the Seelie and Unseelie courts, brownies, fairies, elves, kelpies, stuff like that. That's the extent of the mythology. And she's made a couple of comments in this book referencing um, different Indian gods or goddesses, but I don't think it's ever mentioned ever again other religions and if their mythologies are part of the stories that are true. I could be totally wrong. Maybe I'm just not, I don't have the best memory, but I definitely don't remember this. Okay. I just read something that I don't remember ever happening. And I hope this doesn't become like a theme where I'm just like, well, I don't remember this. I don't remember this. Because that'll get kind of annoying for the video. They're still at Magnus's party. They're talking to him about, how he put a block on Clary's mind and all that. And so they're talking about Magnus when she says, when he crossed his arms, his t-shirt rode up, showing a strip of flat golden stomach unmarked by a navel. Meaning Magnus doesn't have a belly button. Why was that a detail that she chose? Because at no point do I ever remember that coming into play. Like, yes, he's a warlock. He's the son of a devil. But he was born to a human mother. He was born as a human. He would have had an umbilical cord. He would have had a belly button. So unless Magnus used magic to remove his belly button, but even then, why choose that detail? That never comes into play ever. Like, it's not part of the lore of warlocks, at least not that I remember. That's just a weird detail to add. Okay, I feel like taking this show on the road a little bit. I'm going to go drive around. I've got to pick my wife up from work in a couple hours. And I just feel like finding somewhere to park and read this book. So we're going to do that.
And in the name of the angel Raziel, I ask your blessings on my mission against the darkness. Clary stared at him. He didn't move, though the night wind blew his hair into his eyes. He blinked, and just as she was about to speak, the door opened with a click and a creak of hinges. And this is what? Some kind of deal you have with the Catholic Church? Not specifically. Demons have been on Earth as long as we have. They're all over the world in their different forms. Greek demons, Persian devas, Hindu asuras, Japanese oni. Most belief systems have some method of incorporating both their existence and the fight against them. Shadowhunters cleave to no single religion, and in turn, all religions assist us in our battle.
All right, I had to find a place to pull over so I could talk about that. So he says that demons are known across all cultures. And obviously certain demons pop up around different areas of the world. That's why you have different stories about different types of demons from different cultures, like Japanese oni and some of the other ones that he mentioned. So after hearing that bit, I remember that from the first read that I did years ago. My question now is, so do all cultures have these myths based off of real demons, but then they get their myths and their beliefs of like the angelic beings and the gods wrong? So everyone has it right about demons, but no one can agree about how the gods are. Also, the angels, they're clearly based off of the Christian views of angels. The angels you would hear about in the Bible, Gabriel, Michael, those guys. Does that mean that the other cultures' deities are wrong? Am I overanalyzing this? 100%. Okay, so I just made it to the part where Clary and Alec are having their little spat because Alec's like, you need to go home, you need to stay away from Jace. And Clary basically calls him out and says, like, just admit that you hate me only because you're in love with Jace. And then Alec, like, throws her up against the wall and, like, threatens to kill her if she ever mentions that again. I know from reading this before, Alec has a very good character arc. And he's done a lot of stupid shit in the series, but he does eventually become one of the better characters. And he's also part of the power couple that is Malik. But low-key, in this first book, maybe even the next one, he's kind of a bitch. And it's kind of funny because, like, when I first read the book, I imagined Alec to look more like how he does in the TV show. Whereas the movie, they casted a shorter man who kind of gives that, like, smarmy attitude. And as I'm reading it, I'm trying to see it more as what the show is, but because I'm also listening to the audiobook, the girl narrating does his voice like the guy in the movie. And so it's really hard not to see him as this, like, tiny little piece of shit. But also, Clary wasn't in the right for calling him out like that. Like, she's also a bitch. Like, I never really cared for Clary as a main character. I was reading these books for all the other characters. So, like, on one hand, I kind of understand why Alec would be so hateful toward her. But also, did she deserve to be, like, thrown up against the wall and, like, almost crack her head open because she said what she said? No. We're now at the greenhouse scene. And because of the movie, I can't read this scene without Demi Lovato yelling in my head. Like,
No, there's no one else's eyes that can see into me.
so out of all the things in this book that the movie decided to adapt almost perfectly, they decide to get the scene of Simon catching Clary and Jace kissing, and then Simon's confession of his love for her. I mean, they almost did it exactly word for word, but yet there's so many other little details that they decided just to completely ignore and or change that kind of made no sense in the movie or no sense to the story, but yet they did it anyway. And since we're on the topic of that scene, Clary sucks. So many times in this book has she talked about how great Simon is, how he's always been there for her, and how he's just like the best guy. And it's like, oh wait, no, maybe he is cute or whatever. And yet just this guy who's been a complete ass the entire story, she's all of a sudden in love with him. Like, I get teenagers make stupid decisions. And I would say that her decisions would make more sense if her inner monologues aligned with that. She's constantly talking about how Jace is a jerk, Simon is great, and yet she falls in love with Jace. Like, I'm trying not to be so harsh on Clary's decisions because I know she's just a 15-year-old girl. Teenagers make dumb decisions. But then the other protagonists later in the series are also 15, 16, 17. They're not making as dumb decisions as she is. Or maybe they did and I just don't remember it. So I find it odd that no one was suspicious of Hodge at any point in time. Like, yes, he's serving a sentence for his crimes of when he was in the circle with Valentine, but I would still be suspicious of his allegiance to Valentine now that it's been revealed that he's alive. He supposedly had learned his lesson, but if you were repenting for what you have done and you were trying to show the Clave that, you know, you were on their side, that you were no longer in allegiance with Valentine, you would not let these 15, 16-year-old kids bargain to give the cup to Valentine for Clary's mother. You are going to be like, yeah, we're going to find the cup, but we're going to find it for the Clave. Like, he is fully in support of these kids using it as a bargaining chip to get Clary's mom back. Like, he very clearly wants the cup in Valentine's hands. Why is no one noticing that? Like, he's gonna betray you. So they just got back to Dorothea's place to find the cup, and Dorothea is already acting way different than she normally would. Like, I know that from reading it before, she betrays them, so maybe I'm just seeing things that normally wouldn't, but I feel like the way it's written, it's like very clear from the moment they walk in the door that she is not acting right. Also, I don't remember her demon transformation from the book, so rereading it, this was way better than what they had in the movie. Like, it was kind of, the one they had in the movie was pretty lame compared to what they did here. And of course, in this scene, they do Simon so dirty in the movie, because in the movie, Simon shows up, Madame Dorothy is walking out of the house after trapping everyone else in the house, Clary's screaming through the window, Simon grabs a shovel, hits her in the head, tackles her through the door, and then Jace pops out and stabs and gets the kill. In the book, Simon busts down the door, shoots out the skylight with Alec's bow and arrow, and the sun hits the demon, killing it. So Simon is the hero, whereas in the movie, they make Jace the hero again. Simon is a way better character than what the movie depicted him as. Yes, later he does some stupid stuff in the books, and we'll get into that when that time comes. He was just such a normal, relatable character. Like, I would have loved to have seen this story through his POV. Okay, so Luke's a werewolf. I knew that. That is the only plot reveal in the entire book that she didn't have like blatant indications that that was the deal. Like, Hodge still working with Valentine, it's pretty obvious. Valentine being Clary's dad, very obvious. Luke being a werewolf, there was almost, well, hold on. I say this. There was the bit when they were in his shop or in his basement or whatever, where there were the manacles. So maybe Maybe I spoke too soon. That was kind of like the only indication. So wait. Now every plot twist has been obvious. I forgot that they had the manacles in his shop. So here's the thing. I know that through some like flashbacks in some of these books and like some short stories she written in that time period that we have a lot of details on the era of shadow hunters that would have been like the 90s, meaning like Clary's parents, the Lightwood's parents, the formation of the circle. We have plenty of bits and pieces of their story, but that is an era that I always wanted a trilogy in. Like we have 6 books set in the years of like 2007 to 2009. We have 3 books from like 2012 to 2013. We're about to have, let's see, the next ones are only going to be set in like 2016, but then we also have, the Victorian era, the Edwardian era. I wanted, like, even if we don't get like a 90s Shadowhunters, I would have wanted maybe a 70s Shadowhunters. Like, let's find out about some of these other eras that we didn't get a whole lot of detail in. But she's going to end it after this next trilogy. The last ones were set in like 2012. I think it's only like a 3-year time jump, so it's really only going to be like 2015. Like we're going to be reading this trilogy and it's going to be set like 11 years in the past. Like that's almost enough to call it a period piece at this point. But yeah, I'm really bummed that we're not going to get any more Shadowhunters after this next trilogy because I feel like there's so much more left open that she could write about. But I get if she's just done with it and she wants to lay it to rest and work on other things. She's been doing it almost 20 years. It'll definitely be 20 years by the time the series is ended. I'm just going to miss it. And there it is. Okay, we just got the reveal that Valentine is also Jace's dad. This is right before the final chapter. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and read just a little bit in so we get a little bit more context before I make too many comments about this. Okay. All right. So I got through, I don't know how much I have left. I'm in the final chapter, not very many pages left, but he's at least gotten through the exposition of basically explaining how Jace and Clary are related. Not defending her choice for that at all. It's very weird that that's the route she went. Back when I first read this, being 12, 13 years old, I was like, ew, that's gross. What a crazy plot twist, though. Reading it now, he's very clearly lying. Like, I think that was supposed to be very apparent when reading this because, one, it's been said probably over a dozen times, he's a very good liar. He's a charmer. He can manipulate anyone. Like, he is like a silver-tongued devil, right? And throughout the entire part where he's explaining the backstory of everything, it feels fake through all of it. I can see why a lot of people would read this and be like, ew, gross, I'm done, not reading it. But I think it's meant to be like very obvious that it's a lie. But because they are confused teenagers, they don't know what to believe. Doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean she should have put that in there. And once you get the reveal that it is 100% fake in the second book, it makes it a lot easier to just blow past that one plot point and read an amazing 20 book series. But yeah, I understand that plot point was weird, kind of unnecessary, but this is still one of my favorite series ever. Okay, so I finally finished it. I'm not going to do final analysis here. I do want to say a couple things and then I'm going to sit on it for a day, come back and give you my final thoughts. So other than the final line being kind of cheesy, this was a pretty good book. And I say that like I didn't know that. Why would I think otherwise? This has been the series I've obsessed over for 18 years. It's definitely 2000s YA. You can definitely still feel that. Some of the prose still hold up. Some of them feel like a debut novel. But yeah, let me sit on this and then I'll be back in like 5 seconds for you guys with my final thoughts. All right, so final thoughts on City of Bones. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It is definitely a early 2000s YA, so it's not gonna stack up compared to some of the other books that I've been currently reading, but I think for the book that it is, it still holds up. It was interesting reading this now that I am 18 years older than I was when I read it the first time. I am seeing these characters in a different light. I don't know yet if that's going to positively or negatively impact my views of the entire series. There was quite a bit that I seem to have forgotten about. You know, not major story plots, but just little details. And I feel like that is going to end up being a common theme throughout the rest of these videos. But yeah, this book was pretty good, and I can totally see why 12-year-old Aaron got obsessed over this series way back when. So on to book 2, but I will say I remember out of the first 3 books, being City of Bones, City of Ashes, and City of Glass, that I liked the second one the least. It was 3-1-2. So I'm interested to see how consistent my views of these books will be, or if I'm going to change that up. But either way, I know that book 3 is going to end up being the best of these first trilogy. But thank you so much for watching, and hopefully this was entertaining enough that you'll want to watch the next one. I don't know exactly how frequently I'll be able to get these videos posted. They tend to stay about this thickness for a while, so I'm able to get through them pretty fast, but as we get further into the series toward the middle, they get pretty big. So I might be able to get the first few out really fast, and then who knows. Either way, they will all be done before November. So again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.